up, guys? Welcome to the channel. If you're new, I hope you stick around. Hope you like what you see. And as usual, if you guys are returning, I really appreciate your continued support. And as you know, what we do, we're going to get right into it. So today we're going to go over a rifle of mine that has been in my inventory for probably longer than any other fighting type rifles. And that rifle is a rifle you guys have seen on the channel before. It is my 14.5-inch URGI adjacent clone. So I say the whole clone thing rather loosely because this thing's been around with me since about around the Sandy Hook times. If you're not familiar when that happened, it was about 2012, late 2012. So I'd say I probably completed building this thing early 2013. And at that point, I didn't have a whole lot of good luck with ARs so far. I bought my first one in the early 2000s, basically as soon as the assault weapon ban fell through. And my first one was a Bushmaster, probably the worst gun I've ever owned, but I didn't know anything about ARs at the time, so I didn't know how to go about trying to diagnose and troubleshoot what was going on with it, so I just kind of stayed away from ARs for quite a while. But fast forward again to around the 2012 time, the Magpul Art of the Dynamic Carbine videos were coming out and stuff. I had since gotten my first AK. It was actually an AK-74, so I started with 5.45 by 39, and I probably never get away from it. But anyway, I came to the realization that, hey, my first one was it had some issues. So not only do I think I want another one, but I think I'm going to build my own. And so I started watching, I was really into Travis Haley at the time. Started watching a lot of his videos and basically took every play from his book that I possibly could and came up with this thing. What we've got here is a 14.5-inch, as I mentioned before. It is pinned and welded, so we don't have to worry about any of the gay TF things, because apparently 1.5 inches less barrel than 16 is apparently too scary for people to have without having a tax stamp or a permanently affixed muzzle device. But before I get off on a tangent about that, let's just get into the rifle. So right now, obviously, we have that Exigent Defense Fire Team on there. So far, I am loving this suppressor. This thing is outstanding. And until I try some other things on this rifle, this will probably be the primary can on this gun. On the end, we have a Reardon. It's basically an extra long A2 flash hider, again, so I can get up to that stupid legal length. And then really what I consider to be the heart of the rifle is in the upper receiver. And we've got a BCM cold hammer forged chrome lined barrel. Touching on this barrel, we'll probably come back around to it. The reason why I chose that barrel is it had the length that I wanted, the gas system that I wanted. This is mid-length, so it's in between carbine and rifle. It provides a really soft shooting experience. Another reason why I went with cold hammer forged and chrome lined. Yes, I know that they're not necessarily known for the greatest accuracy, but these barrels last a really long time, and my goal with this rifle was to build something that I could 100% count on in case things started going south in the country, blah blah blah. So this is, was I should say, and still is basically my go-to rifle. And back from there, we have got a Spikes Tactical upper receiver. Nothing special at the time. They were one of the bigger producers, and I've not had any problems. I mean, some people like to take a dump on Spikes Tactical. They make some pretty basic stuff. Some of their like odd logo lowers I'm not really into, but their basic stuff is good to go. It's mil spec. I've never really had any problems with anything Spikes Tactical. Currently in this guy, we have got, I don't know if you guys see that, it is a Radian enhanced bolt carrier group. It originally, for about 8,000 of the 10,000 plus rounds it's been through this thing, it had a Spikes Tactical mil spec phosphate bolt carrier group, chrome lined, all that good stuff. Never had any problems with it, ever, not one. I just decided to change it because I had the bolt carrier group kind of laying around. I didn't have it in anything. It's the sand cutter, so it's got like grooves in the rails to where it's supposedly more reliable. The dirtier it gets and all that stuff, or it doesn't, the grime and stuff like that, it's got a place to go, basically. So swap that out. I did notice my Spikes carrier probably needed the gas rings changed. It wasn't bad. The gun was still functioning just fine, but they were definitely on their way out. So handguard that we've got on here currently is a Geisley Mark IV. The reason why I went with the Mark IV is we got a little bit of Picatinny up here, and the rest is M-LOK. So if I do want to put a laser or anything like that up here and use it for night vision, I can do that. I don't really trust putting a pick rail in an M-LOK section and trusting that to hold 0, so I would rather have that. And I didn't really feel like paying a ridiculous amount of money for a high quality quad rail at the time. I got this is actually a Blim, or a Blimula, from one of Geisley's sales. I got it super cheap. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong at all. Honestly, I think sometimes Geisley dings stuff on purpose to put in that sale. I'll see if I can find some old pictures of this thing. Originally, I did have a Troy Industries, I think it's the Alpha handguard on it. Had the round holes in it. Well, you know, times have changed several times since 2012. So being able to put things elsewhere, you had to like buy their proprietary little pick mounts and stuff, and it just added a lot of, you know, stuff just stuck off of it a long ways, and didn't really care for it. Never had any problems with it, but at the same time, it also wasn't the cool thing, and I let that get the better of me because I kind of wish I had that handguard back. Maybe not on this gun, but it was a cool handguard. For a temporary time, I had a Midwest Industries lightweight M-LOK handguard on there. Nothing wrong with that, but definitely not as stout as one of these Geisleys. So I had the chance, you know, again, on a sale to get the Geisley, so I elected to go with that. So currently we have got the PWS Mark I Ambi lower. This is the first Ambi lower that's ever pushed me over the edge to be able to, or to want to buy one. Personally, I shoot right-handed most of the time because I'm right-handed. So the whole Ambi thing, I don't really buy into it, still don't. Don't really see the need for it for most people. But I like some of the features, the extra flared magwell. As far as the ambidextrous thing, I even took the ambi safety out of it because I don't care. But being able to reach up here, push this little button, and lock the bolt back to do malfunctions or malfunction clearing was a big plus. I never use the bolt release on this side ever. I just use the standard one on the normal side. We are rocking also another Geisley product. We have got the Geisley G2S, so cheapest trigger they make. It's 2-stage, 4.5 pound. Good trigger. I went with the 2-stage just because sometimes I use this, obviously, for a little bit more precise shooting, which is where I think a 2-stage trigger really shines. The guys that like to burn stuff down, run and gun, I don't really think the 2-stage is getting you what you think it is, and that can be on another video. And obviously, we have got the B5 Systems pistol grip. Love these things. I started putting these things on most of my ARs and even some of my AKs. It's just, I like the angle, I like the texture, I like how big it is for my gorilla hands, and yeah, I really like those. And going back from there, as you guys may know already, this does have the BCM Mark II buffer system, which is like Great Value Voltor A5. Uses a standard rifle spring, so like on an M16 fixed stock, same spring, but the tube's a little bit shorter and the buffer's a little bit shorter, but it gives me a heavier buffer and it makes the ejection and everything a lot more consistent. And at the back, we've got a Voltor stock. I love these stocks. They were super cool when I was starting to get into these things, and they were super expensive back then. They're still super expensive now, but after getting a few of them, hands down my favorite stock for anything with a buffer tube on it. They're just great stocks. They're the only one so far that has not pulled my beard hairs out, and that's a huge plus for me. As I was mentioning, I've had this thing for a long time. I had it during the era where 5.56 was extremely cheap. Granted, when I first built the gun, 5.56 was not that, but later on, especially steel case, so this thing has seen probably by far more steel case than brass. I will also mention that most of its life, most of these rounds have not been suppressed, so keep that in mind. But this thing has been an absolutely amazing rifle. Again, there's a reason why it's my go-to. And before we get into some of the accuracy and stuff, we have got a 4-power ACOG. This is for a 14.5-inch barrel with 62 grain. That's what the Bolt BDC is for. It's literally the same thing that the Marine Corps used, because this thing has an NSN number on it. If you're not familiar with that, that's what the Navy and stuff puts on it. So somebody tactically acquired this thing whenever they were leaving and decided to sell it later, and now I've got it. The tritium in it, dead. Unfortunately, I was talking to M26 Lemon Grenade about this thing earlier, and I can't send this thing back because, you know, having an NSN number on it, it means it's like government property. So if it goes back to them, they'll keep it and they will not send it back. But part of the reason why we have this weird looking red dot mount back here, this thing is so old that it does not have the RMR bosses on the back. So luckily Trijicon does make a mount for these old ACOGs, and as you can see, I don't have an RMR in there. I've got a Holosun EPS. I just prefer the EPS. Got the 2 MOA on there, and this thing's actually been rock solid since I put it on there. So, as I mentioned, at least 10,000 rounds through this thing. I would say 3,000-ish have been suppressed. And this thing is holding up outstanding. I actually took this thing out earlier today, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But just a little bit ago, I shot a 10-round group at about 50 yards. So the ammo that I was using is just Scorpio, STV, whatever you want to call it. It's just some stuff out of the Czech Republic. Even though it says it's 223, it is hotter than most, like even Lake City M193 ball. So it's actually, it says 223, but it's 5.56. And I've gotten pretty decent accuracy out of it. But this thing with just off-the-shelf ball ammo, I'm holding a little over 2 MOA. If I put match grade ammo in this thing, it will easily shoot under 1 MOA 5-shot groups. Like every time, no problem. So as I mentioned before, I did take this thing out to a range that I'm now a member of, where I can shoot out to 1,300 plus yards. We didn't take this thing out that far, but just using the BDC, I was able to connect at least once or twice at 700, shooting 75 grain Frontier match ammo. Surprisingly, I was actually having to hold the 700 yard hash mark a little below the target, so I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm not sure if the ballistic coefficient of that longer bullet is helping it fly better. I'm not sure. I'm not that good at long range shooting just yet, but anyway, really good performance out of this thing, especially again being 10,000 plus rounds, and I'm still able to connect all the way out to 700 with a 4-power ACOG. So before we wrap this thing up, a few things I realized I may have missed. This bolt release here on the PWS lower is by far my favorite. It's got that like checkered pattern, and man, it's hard to slip off of that. And when I got the lower, I was thinking to myself, man, I really wish they made these to where you could buy that and put in, you know, guns that don't have it instead of having to buy that lower. And now they do. So I have several of those sitting around that I just need to remember that I have so I can swap them into new guns. Also, the light that we're running on here is a Cloud Rain 3.0. This is the legacy body, so this is like the 100,000 Candela, but it uses the Surefire tail caps. I've got the Surefire deal, or the pressure pad here. So we got temporary, permanent, and I have the clicky button on this one because, again, this is my go-to. So I'm just thinking in my mind, like, well, what if I have a problem with this? Well, I can still use it if I use the clicky button on the back of the light. Also, this guy has an old BCM gunfighter charging handle. So this thing is back when Voltor was actually teaming up with BCM to make those. Voltor recently started making them again. What happened was, not long after I got these, I believe it was Badger Ordnance, sued them claiming that they stole their idea for their latch or something like that. I don't know about that. But anyway, this charging handle's been great. I wish I could show you that it is one of those, but it's been used so many times that all the Voltor and the BCM lettering and stuff that was on it, gone. Some of you guys may notice I do not have any backup iron sights. Part of that reason is ACOGs don't tend to have the best eye relief, so that's one reason. At the same time, ACOGs are pretty much bomb proof. M26 Lemon Grenade can probably agree with me that Marines can break about anything, and they still have a really hard time breaking ACOGs. So this ACOG requires no batteries. I don't have to worry about it really going down. If I need illumination, I can peel this electrical tape back. That's a Marine Corps or military trick that I see guys do. And even with most of it covered up, on today being super bright, it's almost too much. But all in all, this rifle with no suppressor, unloaded, weighs only 8 pounds, 6.5 ounces. So it's safe to say 8.5 pounds, which is pretty damn good with a magnified optic with a dot on top of it. That's keeping this thing pretty lightweight. But just goes to show, if you invest good money into good products, they will serve you for a long time. I understand some of you guys may be on a budget, and that's fine. Definitely you should live within your means. But if you're buying something like a PSA, I would not use that as your go-to rifle. Maybe it's a range toy, maybe you're using it for training for now, saving and trying to get something like this later on down the road. That's fine. I would not buy a cheap gun or buy cheap parts to put in your gun and say, oh, this is I'm going to trust my life to it. I'm going to trust my family's life to this rifle. I wouldn't do that. So again, this thing, it did cost me a pretty penny even back in the day, but here we are 14 years later. God dang, I'm old. But it's still serving me really well. I'm printing really good groups, sub-MOA with good ammo. I'm making hits with a 4-power optic out to 700 yards. This thing, again, has just served me tremendously well over the years and will probably continue to do so. But trying to keep this video as short as I can. If you guys have any questions or anything that I didn't cover over this rifle, the build, something in performance that you're curious about, comment section. Feel free to ask me. I'll do my best to reply to you. And if you guys have stuck around this long, I really appreciate it. You might consider liking, sharing, subscribing, all that good BS. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. And remember, it doesn't matter how fast you miss.